Hello and welcome everyone. Today's session is writing. We learn how to write a persuasive essay. By the end of this session, you should be able to identify, understand, and use the 5 steps of the writing process of a persuasive essay. So, what is this writing process? Writing is in itself a process because your idea goes through a lot of steps or changes or stages before you produce your final work. There are 5 major steps in the writing process, which are pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and finally publishing. Let's study the diagram to see how moving through the writing process can work. Remember, you can go back to a stage in the process. It does not always have to occur in order. So let's check this diagram. The first step we said is pre-writing. So in the pre-writing, what should we do? First, you will explore ideas, choose a purpose and an audience that you would like to target, gather details, and sequence your ideas. This is before you start writing. Then you move to drafting. In drafting, you will put your ideas down, develop a thesis or controlling idea, and finally structure ideas in a sustained way. Just I would like to draw your attention to this step in the writing process, drafting. Many students did just as you give them the topic, they just go, they write something and they submit it. What you write is only a drafting, and if you don't do the pre-writing, your drafting will be really bad. And even you do the pre-writing and you go to you do your first draft and you send it to your teacher, it will not look good because there are some steps after drafting that are missing. So make sure you do not submit your first draft, the first piece of paper you write, the first writing. We do not submit it because there are other stages that you have to go through. Next, after drafting, after you finish your first draft, should you send it to your teacher? Definitely not. You should revise it. So what I would do, after I finish my first draft, I'm gonna take a walk outside, drink a cup of coffee maybe, do anything like for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, then come back and take a look at my piece of writing. And then I should revise it. How should I do that? You should reread the draft to see what works and what does not. Use a rubric to evaluate your work. Analyze what you want to change or improve, then make changes. After revising, then the step of editing comes. What should you do in this phase? You should check the accuracy of the facts that you presented, correct errors. You check your spelling, grammar, usage, and mechanics. And finally, after you finish those steps, only then you can go to the final step, that is publishing. And here you produce a final polished copy of your writing, then you share it or you submit it to your teacher. And of course, those steps of revising and editing, you can like do them once and twice. And as I said before, those steps should not occur in this exact sequence. You can start, for example, with editing and go back to revising. It's totally fine. All right. So the first step of writing, the writing process is the pre-writing. It means before you start even writing. What should you do? You have to plan your piece. How can I do so? By using this table. Use these graphic organizers to state your thesis, organize your arguments, and identify details. Only when you finish completing this table, only then you can start writing your first draft, not final. So first you start with a clear thesis. Write your thesis here. Then choose your first persuasive argument, details and supporting evidence. Second, a persuasive argument, then again supporting evidence and details, and finally you write the reader's objections, or in other words the other side of this argument, and you provide a counter argument to those objections. Only when you plan and finish this table, only then you can start your first draft, and make sure you follow the same sequence. The second step is drafting. First, in this persuasive essay, there are three parts. Okay, the first one is introduction, body, and conclusion. So far, so clear. What do we do in the introduction? We start with a lead and a clear thesis or position of what the topic, of the side of the topic I'm writing about. And the purpose of doing this is to grab our reader, the attention of our reader, to make it interesting, so that the reader will be interested in reading our piece and maybe taking our side. Then I move to the body paragraph, or paragraphs sometimes, here where we build our case. How? By presenting our persuasive arguments, as I said before, the first one and second one at least with supporting evidence and details. Then logically organized arguments. My arguments in this essay should be organized. There should be a sequence from the beginning until the end. And finally, I should counter arguments to address other points of view. This is, I'm stating my point of view. I'm trying to convince people to take this stand, but also I should be aware of the argument of the other side and state it, then counter argument this side or this stand. And finally, the last paragraph is conclusion. And here I close the deal. How? By restatement of the position that I wrote here, and then memorable ending that will make the reader think about your side and maybe take your side. Next, we have revising. After you draft, you don't send your piece of writing to your teacher. I say it and I repeat it because so many times students just write about a topic and send it immediately without going through the steps, and then I discover so many mistakes that should be corrected. So let's make it better. How? Now you have finished your first draft, so you are ready to revise, make changes to improve your draft by adding, removing, replacing, or reordering. After that, the step of editing comes. Let's make it correct. Before editing your final draft, consider using more complex tenses in active and passive voice to add clarity and variety to your writing. Finally, you finished all of those steps. Now it is your time to publish your piece. Make the word just a little bit better by spreading a good idea. Publish your editorial. All right. Those steps, we will go through them while writing our persuasive essay more in depth in our synchronous classes, inshallah. What I want you to do now, your task is to write a brief summary of the 5 steps of writing that I just presented. What have you learned? What are those steps and how can I use them? Okay, just a brief summary. Write it down and send it over in private message via Teams. Should you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me, and have a lovely day.